G'day and welcome to AoS Coach. You know who I am, but you probably know who my guest is as well. We are talking all things Orruk Warclans, specifically our Kruleboyz. It's a cruel summer, and I'm here with the dirtiest player in the game. What kind of warlord are you? I was going to call you like a mere knob, or like I was going to call you something like.
I've never actually been a big destruction player before Kruleboyz came out, but I guess a shaman. I've always played like a shaman or a warlock for D&D, so very much the back rank. You got it, dude. I'll cast from back here.
Yeah, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons with the Baldur's Gate 3 lately, and the warlock has been so good. This is the shaman himself, Jacob Brendan. You were here last year talking just about Kruleboyz in 3rd edition, and the minute 4th edition dropped, it's interesting because I rewind the clock for a second, right? Kruleboyz has been a really bizarre army. You know, we had out the gates, it was all about big yellers and shoot. That lasted, 2 odd years. We finally had enough points discounts and rule changes that Gut Rippers became really good. Nobody really had figured out Kruleboyz, and you were the first person that I saw who was consistently performing incredibly well on the tournament scene. Not to say other people weren't performing well, but you were just constantly top of the tree when it came to Kruleboyz. So I couldn't think of a better person to be the Potgrot Shaman. So the Potgrot to Jacob's Shaman. That was a terrible introduction, but we're going to run with it. Welcome back. Let's just talk Kruleboyz because this intro is too early in the morning and I am rambling.
Perfect. Good to be here.
Thanks for that. Such a small little good to be here.
Perfect.
All right, Jacob. Let's talk Kruleboyz. So 4th edition's come out. The way we've generally structured this conversation with other guests is I want to know a little bit about how have you found Kruleboyz in 4th edition, very high level. Are they still like they were in 3rd edition? Have they changed? Are they strong? Are they weaker? Are they points to oblivion and they're no longer good? What's your initial read so far based on, I guess, the limited time we've had?
Mm-hmm. So it was actually really funny. I was going to drop Kruleboyz just because I had been playing them for so long. But then when 4th came out, they were the first thing in my bag, and I was like, oh, I'll try them out. And it's crazy because there was a lot of complaints early about points, but I think points across the board were a little bit higher than everybody kind of expected. Like we saw probably a 10% raise in points across the board. So I think overall points, the new Kruleboyz is looking like you're going to lose 1 or 2 small units, but the core is still basically there. In terms of how they play, this was probably the biggest change ever since they got their new battle tactics. Now, I would say this because the playstyle changed and how you're going to approach it. Gun lines got nerfed because, as Warhammer wanted to do, they wanted to reduce shooting in the game. So we lost the mortal wound shooting on a lot of the shooting, and that was a main staple for the original 3rd edition Kruleboyz. And also with the redo of battle tactics and such, it's a completely different army. It still kind of plays the same in the melee, and it plays very much like the tricksy, oh, I'm going to get you, and I'm kind of safe, but I'm still a destruction army, so I still want to be brawling. So it's got a lot of tricks, and I really, really love how it plays, especially with 4th. Denial is the name of the game now for I want to score points and I want to keep my opponent from scoring points. It's not necessarily about killing everything anymore, especially since stuff dies a lot slower. So it is a ton of fun to play. It's still the same bread and butter kind of units and what you want to bring, but the play style is completely different for how do you approach each matchup.
Have you enjoyed the new play style? Because the things have changed, right? And I'll rewind to probably the most impactful army change that I recall since Kruleboyz was I remember when Nurgles went from the Feculent Narmal used to allow them to run and charge. And now all of a sudden they're like, we are the slowest army in the game. You know, we hate this. And some people were completely turned off Nurgle. A lot of people adapted and they're really enjoying the play style and the disease and all that stuff. But is the changes enough that you no longer enjoy Kruleboyz and the people that you know are no longer enjoying them? Or is it just something that we need to adapt to?
I've heard some feedback online. I've heard a lot of complaints, and the early meta watches do not look great for Kruleboyz. But I think this kind of goes back to our last discussion. Actually, we had Kruleboyz is, even though it's one of the beginner armies, it's actually probably one of the most unforgiving armies to play. Your saves are not good. You do not have ward saves. So when people make mistakes, and also as people are learning this game early, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. It doesn't feel good because you're basically going to get tabled when you make those mistakes. All your mans are going to die because you have orcs with 5-up saves and no wards. So when you get caught, it gets caught in a bad way. But I think the play style is still very, very similar in the sense that you're a trading army. Your points are very efficient. You have a lot of wounds on the table, and you want to make sure you leverage those wounds as best you can still. So any wounds you take as a Kruleboyz player is bad wounds taken, but you do great wounds because you do mortals. So that's always been the playstyle, and it's still kind of how the playstyle works now.
It's an army. I remember when I got the faction pack in preparation for 4th edition, and the general vibe was that this is a really strong army. When I looked at this versus its peers, Kruleboyz stands out to me as one of the armies that will be top 5. It is a really strong army. It's not OP. I don't want to say that like it's the most busted, take it to a tournament, you're going to have a 70% or higher win rate. But it is an army that has good power, good efficiency, and is going to reward skilled players. If you play well, if you know your army really well, you make the right decisions, you will go far with this army. Mm-hmm. If you make the wrong decisions, you'll get punished. If you go too aggressive, you'll get punished. If you don't play your dirty tricks in the right fashion, like the right timing or the right things, you're going to get punished. Mm-hmm. So it is a high risk, high reward army. And for a certain type of player, it is the anti-Gargants. Gargants is simple and you just do your thing. Kruleboyz is complex and it rewards the deep thinker.
Yeah.
That's how I see the difference between the two.
I think this is another 4th edition change where we went from a lot of things that were very automatic, or a lot of things that were on 2-ups, and we're seeing a lot more 3-ups now. So like for the mortal wounds, that transition to a D3 on a 3-up system for 4th edition, I think that's a lot more common, and I think that's also a big pain point for a lot of Kruleboyz players, is we went from like poison being handed out automatically to now it's like on a roll. The shaman abilities are gone, but they still do like the armor buff, but that's still again on a roll. The sludge raker venom's on a roll. So like there's a lot of rolls that happen. And when you miss them, you lose a lot of power in your army. But I think this is also, again, a balancing level for across the board. So I think this is just an adjustment period from 4th to 3rd, where it's like, yeah, like there's a lot more risk whenever you do something now. But that's just the game. That's just how they don't want anything to be automatic. They want you to make calculated decisions. And Kruleboyz have even more of those calculated decisions because all your battle traits are related to a roll mechanic. So when you miss it, it's going to feel bad, and then it can compound from there. Like, obviously, you can get unlucky and roll 21s in a row. Like it's going to happen some games, and you're going to lose that game, and it's going to suck. But that's not the army's fault. It's not your fault. But you got to maximize every single roll you get on the table. And so that's a little bit frustrating, but I think as people go on, they'll adjust more and more to the edition and how the new Kruleboyz play.
Yeah, you definitely lost a lot of guarantees, right? You know, in the past you have Bolt Boys where it's like, right, you know, if I don't move, this is the range. If I do move, this is the range. I'm going for the mortals. I'm going for pure volume. I could double reinforce them under a particular battle faction. So that block of 9, that all-out attack on a block of 9 just goes really far. Or alternatively, you're just absolutely spamming, you know, gut rippers, taking advantage of the line of sight blocking outside of 12. Like there's a lot of things, like a lot of guarantees. Mm-hmm. But you got a lot of tools.
You got a lot of tools. You do have a lot of tools. If you want the tools, this is the army for you.
This, and I'm going to get punished for saying this, you are the destruction version of Lumineth.
Yeah, that is fair. It's not as, luckily we're not as focused around one high and mighty elf like Teclis, but you have a lot of dudes. So you can get in the horde and the mob and still run around rampant.
So overall, you're enjoying it. It's a faction that, despite you were thinking you're going to roll off, you're actually now enjoying it. Obviously, you still may play other armies. It's okay. I will allow you to do it. But the changes weren't enough to actually turn you off.
That's a big thing for Kruleboyz players. And I think a lot of people in this edition in general, like, changes refreshed your army. So depending on how much those changes happened, you may get, even if you weren't a Kruleboyz player and you had them on the shelf for a long time, I'd highly recommend coming back to them, because if you didn't like the old play style, this is a completely new play style, so you may enjoy it now even more than you did before. And that was my big takeaway. Was I was thinking, oh, it's probably going to play the same way. I need to refresh myself. I've been playing this for a year. I need to move on. And then after I started playing it, I was like, this is way different, and I'm enjoying it. This is day one again, so like I'm having so much fun with it.
I'll be honest. When I saw the faction pack and I looked at my Dominion box that was unbuilt, and I'm like, is it time? 3 years on, is it time that I finally get out the Kruleboyz? Do I get into, because I love resin, I love playing around with like swamp basing and things like that. I'm like, is this the time? And then I reminded my Slaves of Darkness has rarely been touched, then I should probably spend time on that. While we're talking changes, because I don't want this going on a Slaves of Darkness discussion, how have you found 4th edition changes for Kruleboyz? So, like, there's obviously so many things, right? Whether it is range being, reduced, because it's not just the Bolt Boys that suffered. My long strikes have gone from 30 inches to 18 inches. Obviously, there's, shooting combat or no shooting in combat, depending on the rules. You've got the crit system. You've got, Unleash Hell disappears. You've got new command abilities, no inspiring presence. So my army of Hobgrots is now a real thing. Like, when you look at all of the changes, like, what stands out for you, like either positive or, challenging for you as a Kruleboyz player?
So I think the big positive was honestly Battle Shock going away. Kruleboyz were never like a CP army. You could generate an extra CP with heroic leadership, but like your CP was pretty set. So having the CP preset, pretty nice. No real big change. You weren't really all out attacking or all defending as much, or it was very clear like when you were going to do it. Same for Unleash. Like all that CP was planned, so that was kind of how you played anyway. The flowchart of how crits happened, Mortals stayed pretty much the same. Yeah, they cleaned up the language a little bit, but it basically does the same thing as it did before. The biggest change by far, and I've felt this in every single game I've played, has been Battle Shock. Kruleboyz were a terrible Battle Shock army. Most of them were Leadership 5. When you lost 3 guys, 3 more ran because you rolled that 6 every time. I even took the little foot boss in my previous army to help with Battle Shock because I was losing too many guys and I couldn't spend a CP everywhere, right? That going away, I have felt it every single game where I've lost like 5 orcs in this unit and then nothing else happens. Like, that's the best feeling in the world, that I don't have to use a CP and I don't have to worry about like 3 of my units taking 2 to 3 wounds and then like losing 5 or 6 wounds more when I roll that Battle Shock. So I think your staying power is way, way better. And this is a kind of just a generic AoS 4th edition rule, is like there were the armies that had Bravery 10 who didn't care about this rule, and then there's everybody else who did. And you were one of the armies that did, and now you don't either. So it's super, super nice.
But it opens you up to a lot of things, like just holding 1 person or 2 people on an objective. And it might not be enough to claim the objective, but it pins that opponent in, right? And that's where your shooting comes in, or your countercharging comes in, or there's so many little things that have happened, right? And maybe on the flip side, there's no Mystic Shield anymore, no Finest Hour anymore, unless you're Stormcast. But you talked about the fact that, you've got some pretty average saves and you don't have the ability to like, really take a punch, like quote unquote, without like a Mystic Shield or Finest Hour. Now, there are some rules, there are some things in the book, which is positive, but have you felt that? Have you felt like you can't save stack and like you die?
For units, no, because I think the units play pretty much the same way they did before. There usually weren't a lot defensing for units because, again, it's just 5-up saves. It's like, okay, maybe I get a 6 or I go back to my 5s. The heroes is probably my biggest weak point. Kruleboyz heroes actually got worse saves overall because they either lost a point of save on like the shamans, for example, or the 4-ups with no ward is just really rough because you used to be able to find a hour and then all defense defensively, and you don't have that anymore. So you still have all defense, but that extra point of save for Finest Hour was a big, big thing for either the Snatcher Boss or the Vultures or Gobsprak if you're playing Gobsprak. The little heroes, not so much because they would die if they get caught, but the big boys, which you want to play big boys and Kruleboyz, they are a little bit weaker, and you have to adjust to that.
I was thinking that when I actually asked you that example, I was thinking about the non-shaman version of the vulture, because that at times could be a really good offensive piece, and the points came down in third edition enough that you started to see one, sometimes even two, or at least the shaman and the non-shaman version. And offensively in turn one, you could do some really good things with well, actually both of them really. But now it's almost like, now that you don't have that guarantee of finest hour, you don't have Mystic Shield, you might be a little bit more reserved and maybe not charge them full steam ahead in turn one. And to be honest, actually, with some of these rules in fourth edition, I think for Kruleboyz, like, going super aggressive is not the right play.
No. I think most of the games I've lost, and even the World Championship that happened for teams recently, every game that I lost, I was way too aggressive. Most of the time for Kruleboyz, you were a defensive army. They're supposed to fall into your traps. You were not Iron Jaws charging across the table. You were the inverse of that. You are the defensive build that wants people to fall into the spikes, and then they get ganged up on by all your little dudes, or shot. But being headlong into combat is not your role. You want to be defensive.
Any other call outs you'd make either about Kruleboyz overall before we get into the rules, or even just like your experience with fourth edition? Because I mean, there is so much to unpack, whether it's the underdog mechanic, whether it is, like, there's so many things. Actually, Gobsprak. Let me ask you about Gobsprak for a second. I don't know if you've played with him just yet, but how have you found his power level? Because especially in the last edition, which was Magic Primal, and there's no Primal dice anymore, but he was a staple in almost everyone's list, in every Kruleboyz list, and it was actually a consideration as an ally for other armies. How are you finding him?
I think Gobsprak is sadly back in the bin right now. I think with the points hike, he went up to 360, I believe. He went up almost 120 points. He is the most expensive Kruleboyz character outside Kragnos, obviously. And the way Magic works now, I think the 3d6 unbind and doing damage when you unbind is very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But this is, again, back to the fourth edition problem of, like, uncertainty. Primal Dice added a lot of certainty to Gobsprak, where he was like, I'm going to do d6 to you. If you don't roll well, or you roll 1 and like a 5, and you roll 6 and your spell goes off, but you're not going to risk the Primal Miscast, I'm going to unbind you and I'm going to hurt you. And I might kill you if I roll high for your little wizards. I think that's back to being a nicety, where it'll happen like once every 20 games. You're going to be like, oh, cool, I rolled a natural 10 to unbind your 8. And then I rolled a 6 to spike your little wizard. But that's not going to be your standard experience anymore. And that's the difference, is Gobsprak was very, very good when he was that threat, because people just wouldn't cast. They wouldn't give you that opportunity to spike their wizards off. But I think with the math now, and just how there's no bonuses to unbind, there's a lot of bonuses to cast with places of power, and usually buffs, like even the slams now have bonuses to cast but not to unbind. So it's very, very slim margins for you to actually unbind people now and do that damage. So I think Gobsprak is sadly back in the bin. He needed the prize.
Do you think that's still true with manifestations? And given that he's probably one of your best casters, and Destruction doesn't have a lot of good casters, when you chuck out a Kronspine, a Purple Sun, a Jaws, Gnashing Jaws, like, is that still true even with your manifestations?
I think so, sadly, just because of the point cost. I think if he comes down points, we can start talking about him again.
Is this the same third edition conversation? We started off with him too high, and eventually he went down enough points that it became viable.
I think a lot of the Kruleboyz characters are back to where they were in third edition. I think in this, to be fair, I prefer this way. I would rather have my army be a points change away from being perfect downwards, instead of being ridiculously broken, and then the models I just spent a month painting up ready for my next tournament get nerfed into the ground and are unplayable. So I think we're back to that point where the units are in a better space than the characters are. But I think this is also just a fourth edition problem, where a lot of people's characters are kind of like right on the cusp of being too much. They're worth drops now, so that's also a big important value. There's a lot of price that goes into characters. So when they're really, really high on points, that's a big consideration. If you're going to play Archeon, if you're going to play Kragnos, that's a clear path decision. But for those mid-range characters that are in the 300, 200, upper 200s, they don't feel as good because you're adding on drops and you still kind of need your little support heroes to fall around and do their role. So I think Gobstrek right now is just too expensive. And maybe he'll come down. Maybe he comes down back to appropriate levels. But unfortunately right now I just don't think he's a take.
Yeah, no, fair. And I'm sure there'll be some people who can argue and disagree. I think the key here is that, it's probably not an auto include in your list. And, we'll actually show off a few of Jacob's lists through the discussion. But I think basically it's not an auto include. Don't start every list with Gobsprak. And as I look through this book, there's a lot more units who are super viable and definitely worth building around. And look, let's just get into the rules. Let's talk a bit more about all this good stuff. And I'm going to get into your head and we're going to work from right to left kind of thing. Why is that? It's because the stupid word, you got too many rules. You got too many benefits here on battle traits and my logo was taking up things. So I moved it from right to left. So your big one thing that you get, and it is big, is that you got your dirty tricks, your cruel tricks, dirty tricks. So your army can use one dirty trick ability per phase. The effects of a dirty trick ability is only applied if you make a successful dirty trick roll. So dirty trick roll is on a first turn. It's a 2. No. Where's my turn coming to play? Shut up, Anthony.
First roll.
Yeah. I'm making up words. The success of a dirty trick roll depends on the number of dirty trick abilities your army has already used in this battle round. So the first the first one you use is on a 2-up. The second one you do is on a 3-up. The third one you do is on a 3-up. Then the fourth one and subsequent one is on a 4-up. So the less you use, the easier that it gets done. You keep doing them, you get a little harder. So it gets progressively harder as you go through. The 4 dirty tricks. Anything you want to mention at this particular point before we talk about some of the dirty tricks?
Lethal Surprise is a little wrong. It's any turn, and that's the charge phase 1. But that's it. Just for people reading it.
I'll fix that up. I swear I just copy and pasted that. That'll be fixed up in the post edit. It was literally a copy and paste. Anyway, let's keep going. So let's talk anything about dirty tricks.
So the big thing with dirty tricks, I've had a lot of conversations early on about the philosophy of do you want to just use them all and just risk your 5s, or do you want to save them for the very important ones, with those being Venom Encrusted Weapons going for mortals on 5s and 6s, or crits on 5s and 6s, or the ASL, which is always strikes last in the noisy racket combat phase. They're the most 2 impactful. One is more damage, and then one is damage before your opponent gets to go. So it impacts flow state for your fight sequencing. The teleport is also very good. So all of these, the Lethal Surprise is the one that doesn't really matter. Again, D3 mortals, when you get charged, and taking away the charge +1 damage is not really a Kruleboyz thing. I found that doing the D3 mortals is actually more impactful than the taking away charge +1, just because of what's out there, and then you are just probably going to die to anything that charged you like that anyway. I think I'm kind of in between on the philosophy of how to use them. I think most of my games, when I'm going first, I've used them like candy. I'm using every single one I can. I'm going to blow through them, and I'm going to get to your turn, and we're going to start rolling 5s. I think the reason I like that is the uncertainty of your decisions makes the other opponent make more mistakes. So if I save, for example, my Sneaky Sneakin', which is your movement phase teleport, as a 2-up, you're not going to take the tactic to go kill the General's Regiment unit that can teleport all the way on a 2-up. You're going to make that decision. Now on a 5-up, you might start risking it. And that's where that mind game comes in, is do they risk these tactics? Do they not? Do they just avoid them altogether? I think there are ways to play where, as the opponent of the Kruleboyz player, you want to make them use them. And it's like anything else, any other game logic, where if they have the answer, make them have it. If you're the blue player and you have counterspell and the red player is burning you down with fireball, every once in a while, they're not going to have that counterspell and you're going to win that game. So same with all these dirty tricks. going fight last really sucks. But what if they just don't roll it? You gotta make them do it. So for anything else, I think I'm just burning through all my dirty tricks as much as possible to make that uncertainty a question. But I really, really love how these play. I'm always doing Venom Encrusted Weapons on whoever my biggest unit that's going to get in is. Lethal Surprise, I'll do it if my opponent charges me, obviously. I can't really do it in your own turn because that's only if you're getting 2 CP'd countercharged. So that's a little bit more just your opponent's turn. And then Sneaky Sneakin' is great for tactics and is great for setup for the Bolt Boys. And then Noisy Racket doesn't need any explanation. That is insane. And as you play this game, you'll understand that having a unit fight last, even in your opponent's turn, is just insane. So,
is there any ones that you would skip in regards to, like, I really want, for example, I really want the strike last, and I don't want to risk the roll going to a 4-up. I'd rather it be a 2-up, as an example. Are there ones where it's like, yeah, you know what, I can really do without Sneakin'?
So if you're going second, I think that's true. I've played a lot of my Kruleboyz lists have been higher drops, and a lot of people have made me go first. But when you're going second, you don't have the ability to use Venom Encrusted Weapons. Sneaky Sneakin' is not as common because you only really want to teleport to bail yourself out of situations. You can kind of avoid that. So then it becomes a question of, like, do I just pass on Lethal Surprise and go straight from Noisy Racket? I think in that case, yes. But it's going to be a lot more situational. I think that's probably the one time you're going to reserve just using any dirty tricks, because you're really only passing up on 1 to 2 for a potential really big third one. And the second one, the Lethal Surprise one, is not a big pass up. So I think you're really passing out on 1 dirty trick roll to get to that 2-up ASL.
And by the way, I've got no beef with Sneaky Sneakin'. It was more just if there's a particular one that I don't want to do because I don't want to move from 3+ to a 4+. Mm-hmm. Is there situations? Is there ones that I would like? I just don't want to risk that 4-up, because sometimes that's a gamble. Like when you want to go strike last, as an example, you want that certainty as much as possible.
Yeah. Skip it down on Lethal Surprise and Sneaky Sneakin' are that sequence of I'm going second, my opponent goes first, they come in, I pass on those first 2 to get to the fight last. I think that's the one scenario you do so. Everything else, I think you're just burning them. Burn them like candy. Get value out of your battle traits. It's there for a reason. Use everything you can.
Yeah. Look, all 4 of them are great. It's just which ones do you use at which times, and how lucky is your dice rolls, because there's some of them, and I keep going to the strike last because it's powerful. Like we talked about the low armor saves, there's some really nice anti-charge, and there's some really nice little pieces you can play along with here. I get really nervous when I look at the 4-up on Noisy Racket, because that's the one I want as much certainty, and I would almost throw away one of them just to ensure that was a 3-up rather than a 4-up, just personally.
Yeah, we're playing Kruleboyz. We just roll 6s. We just roll all 6s. It's easy. It's always been the Kruleboyz plan, is just roll 6s.
Yeah, I mean, like I play Gargants, right? I do the 4d6 smash on a 4-up. I get it, but I also remember all the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and not the 4, 5s, and 6s. So, but a Gargant can take a little bit more of a punch than a unit of Kruleboyz.
Yeah.
Anything else you talk about on this particular slide? I think overall, these are really strong. They're good, but it goes back to what we said right at the top of the show, is that it's not an easy army to pilot. It is going to be you understanding your army, the decision points, when you use what rule at what time, which ones do you use, which ones don't you use, and it's going to reward a strategic general.
Mm-hmm. I will make one little call out for the battle traits for our battle formations in a moment. For dirty tricks, it is you can use 1 dirty trick per phase. The effect of the dirty trick is only applied if you make a successful dirty trick roll, and then you start picking units. So this happens not when it's activated. Like, you don't say, like, oh, this thing charged me, I'm going to roll. This all happens at the end, or start if it's your turn, of the phase. So you get to see all the movement of the models, you get to see all the charges that happen, and then you decide these things for, like, Lethal Surprise and Noisy Racket, because it's the start of the combat phase for your turn which you've already charged everything, you know what's in combat. And then it's the start our second part of the combat phase for your opponent. So again, you get to see where everybody lands before you decide what becomes Always Strikes Last. So that information is very crucial. And then also you only choose the unit after you make the successful roll. So for Sneaky Sneakin', one battle formation is you can roll this twice. So you can try to teleport the same unit twice, basically, is what it results in doing.
All right, I brought up the battle.
Yeah.
Here's your battle formations. Yes,
Yeah.
because two of those dirty tricks were essentially reactions. They are even though they're not worded as reaction, it requires an opponent to have charged you. It requires a unit in combat, so it's almost like a mini reaction. So you get to see all of the charge sequences, then you get to go, right, okay, this is the unit.
Yeah.
So you've started talking a little bit about battle formations. Let's bring them up, right? So I'd love to know where you stand on these. Are they all around the same strength level? Is one standing out more than others? Is there one that you would never take at this particular point? Remembering that we are very early on in the meta, there are some armies that are performing really well. They might get changed, points might get issued, but like when you look at this at a very high level, what stands out to you?
So I actually think they did a great job of balance with these battle formations. Kruleboyz Claw is basically old, Grin and Blades. But now you have the restriction of wholly within 3 of terrain. This is probably a good change. Grin and Blades was the obvious pick before, so now it's a little bit harder to do, but that makes it more rewarding when it pays off. I've kind of shied away from Kruleboyz Claw. Unfortunately, right now, this is a meta conversation, as you said. I think shooting has been a little light in my meta, and then same with ranges overall going down. Most army ranges is 12 to 18 anyway. So really what this means is it shaves 6 inches off of most ranges. I don't think this is the automatic that it used to be. A lot of armies had 30-inch range stuff. It was insane. They were going to shoot you from across the board. And you, as a Grin and Blades player, were just like, nope, you don't get to do any of that. And I'm going to slowly walk my way forward, and I'm going to get to you eventually. If you want to be shooting me, I'm going to get to you next turn. This is not really the case anymore, just with the reduced ranges. So a lot of power that can be brought to bear is still getting brought to bear effectively against you now, because they know I only have range 15 or 18. Like, yeah, I can lose 6 inches of range. It's not a big deal. So I don't think Kruleboyz Claw is what it used to be. It's still good. Don't get me wrong. I think this is a meta decision more than a every list take now.
Can I just mention one thing I just thought of, and maybe this is you tell me if I'm talking out of my backside.
Mm-hmm.
The new terrain maps. I imagine that could be really helpful for you. Let's say I really did want to do the Kruleboyz Claw. I can now predict my movement and my first couple of rounds now, because instead of like getting up to a table and randomly knowing the terrain placement and trying to make a decision on the fly, I can look at each of the battle plans with each of the terrain maps and go, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to plot my movement. So even though it might not be the best, there is now that new opportunity through the terrain maps that might work in your favor.
Yeah, I think you're going to find variation. So my biggest complaint about this has always been area terrain versus impassable terrain. So, or I guess now unstable terrain. So the level of unstable terrain upon which you can hide your big dudes, which is your Vulture, your Sledge Raker, those are probably the more crucial units that you want to hide. Hiding your 6 Bolt Boys is not going to be that hard, and you're a range unit, so you're going to effectively do it. It's the big monsters that really, really love to not get shot and love to not get seen by these big, nasty spells. They're the ones that are going to really struggle because, yes, you're right. You know where the terrain's going to be, but you don't know if it's going to be an unstable piece with only a little bit of leeway for where you can actually be invisible still, because your big monsters are pretty big bases. Like a Vulture's on a Giant's base, and that's a big base. You basically need a woods. And
I was going to say as well, you've got the small pieces of terrain as tournaments. I feel like we were on this topic for too long. Apologies for this random sidetrack. But, you know, your small pieces of terrain is, 4 inches by 4 inches? So to be wholly within 3 inches with some of these really large bases, that can be quite challenging. It seems like it's good in theory, but actually probably on the table, it doesn't work quite out the way you wanted. But if you do want to do it, I think the terrain map feature is going to really work in your favor.
This is going to be a battle formation that's going to be based on your meta, 100%. If the people are playing a lot of range, if you're going to go up against 4 OBR catapults, this is what you want to take. You're going to ruin their day. It's going to be amazing. But I think overall, this is not the auto pick anymore.
So what is?
So I think right now, between the other three, it's going to be list dependent. The Far Killer Bolts is +3 range to 3 of your shooting units on your turn. This is really good if you're taking 3 units. If you're taking 3 units, you just got +3 range. But this is, again, going to be a list building decision where, am I even taking 3 units? If I'm only taking 1 unit, which I lean towards, I don't really need +3 range of my 1 unit. I'm going to be teleporting, or I'm going to make sure I'm in position to adequately shoot anyway. So I think this is going to be, if you're going to play a lot of Beast Killer bows and a lot of Bolt Boys, this is where you go. Same thing with Trophy Finger. These made-up names are going to screw me up with the Kruleboyz spelling.
try being me. Like, it is horrible.
The Trophy Finger, where your big monsters get crit 2, very, very good. But again, if you're only taking 1, maybe 2 monsters, this is probably going to be a pass from you because, again, it's not as good. And then lastly, Dead Sneaky is you get to attempt the sneak and dirty trick twice per turn. So you can teleport 2 of your 10 or less infantry units around the board. This is what I've been leaning right now because it's the most fluid, it's the most redundant. So again, it goes back to I basically get 2 dirty trick rolls to guarantee my 1 unit teleports. And I've been leaning really heavily on that with my 1 unit of 6 Bolt Boys or a little infantry character that I need to get out of dodge. A 5-up rerollable is around 50%, so it basically guarantees a 4-up, which is really, really good. But I think any of these 4 are honestly acceptable in the current meta that you're playing. It's just going to be dependent on what you want to play and then how other people around you are playing. So you can adjust to whatever.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think a newer player, someone who's picking up Kruleboyz for the first time or relatively inexperienced, maybe I'd say don't take Lightfinger. I think, stick to something that's a bit more guaranteed, like Claw, like all the 2 fingers. If you are an experienced player and movement is key, positioning is key, Finger is probably the strongest of the 4. Mm-hmm. But you are burning through your dirty tricks, which then gets you to my big problem all along, which is getting the strike last on a 4-up. So you are going to burn through that a little bit more.
I think my favorite in order is probably Light Finger, Trophy Finger, Claw, and then Middle Finger. Just because I don't play a lot of shooting in my builds anymore. I used to play 3 units of Bolt Boys, and now I'm kind of down to 1. But that's just kind of how I've decided on this. I think they're very close, and I think it's a personal decision. So yeah. I really do love Trophy Finger because big monsters doing lots of damage is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would agree. Light is number 1. The middle and Trophy are probably list dependent, and then Claw. Yes, I would probably agree with that at this particular point. Yeah, but again, as the meta settles, points adjust, rules change, blah blah blah. You might get a better feel, but I think to your point, none of them are the wrong answer. It's not like there's one that's like we'll never see play, like the old.
It was.
Well, I was gonna say I don't remember the name. It was just like it was Grinning Blades or it was Big Yellows and the other one, whatever the other one was.
Skullbugs was. I don't think it was ever taken. I don't think I saw anybody ever take it. It was crazy.
I don't think I ever saw it either, to be honest. I really don't ever think I saw it. You got 3 heroic traits. Again, really cool if you take a War Master, whether it's Kragnos or Gobsprak. Do you have any other War Masters? Is it just those 2?
Just those 2.
Yeah, cool. So if you take one of those, you still can take advantage of a heroic trait, which is super neat. How would you rate these 1, 2, 3? Egomaniac, Backstabber, and slippery scumbag for those people who are listening.
Luckily, this isn't as complicated as battle formations. I think this is an obvious 1, 2, and 3. Slippery Scumbag is insane. Roll die on 3-up, you can immediately retreat. This on big monsters like the Vulture, everybody's been playing with. It's really strong. It's really, really good. You should play this. Next up is Egomaniac, is exactly what it was before. It's basically a 4-up bodyguard to Kruleboyz Infantries. A lot of people used to take this on the Sledge Raker. I actually liked it better in the old edition than I do now. I still am of the philosophy, and this is exactly what I said in the old video, taking any wounds is bad. So even though you're shifting your wounds from your monster to your infantry, it's still just, you just not want to be taking wounds. This is not a good trait to take because you're going to rely on it and it's going to burn you. And then Backstabber is pick an enemy hero in combat with your hero and more Kruleboyz units, and then you do D3 mortals plus 1 for each unit. I just don't think you live long enough to actually realize any value off this, because every game I've played so far, I've either died, in which case you don't get this because it's end of any turn, or I've killed my opponent, which means I don't need to do more damage because it's a hero. So I think this is Backstab is just bad, unfortunately. So I understand if people want to play Egomaniac and they really like their big monster not to die, sure, you can play it, but like I think Slippery Scumbag is just by far the best choice.
Yeah, I agree with you. Wholeheartedly, I agree with you. Yeah, Slippery Scumbag, because your infantry heroes are not that durable. So I want to keep them around, whether it is that shaman, whether it is whatever it is. And the fact that this is any combat phase, not just a once. This type of thing, I thought this would be like a once per game ability, but the fact that it's any combat phase, that stands out head and shoulders above the rest.
Yeah. And it adds on to the Kruleboyz tricks, where it's just like, oh, I could randomly leave. Like, you could charge me, and since it's a combat phase ability, you can decide your ordering. So you can do your dirty trick of fight last, and then if you fail that, you can decide to get yourself out of combat with Slippery Scumbag. So this is honestly more redundancy on that. So I really, really like this. This is by far the best one.
This rule has burnt me a couple of times against Skaven, where I've picked a hero to kill as a battle tactic. The Skaven unit runs away, and then because I've got to do the damage in combat, right? You can't shoot it off the board. I've now lost that battle tactic, or I've got to rely on killing a bigger, swingier thing in order to achieve it. So don't underestimate this particular one. This one is just too good.
Yeah. A lot of armies have this. Furies have it. Skaven have it. This has been making the rounds, and it's a pretty common one. So it's really, really good.
Before we move on to Artifacts, what type of heroes are you thinking about are good recipients of the Scumbag?
I think it's either your Snatch Boss on your Sledge-Raker or your Vulture, because you're the two most mobile things, so you get the most out of that movement. Just easy. You get 12 inches out of your Vulture, you get 8 out of your Snatch Boss. You want to keep those things alive, so if you get into a bad engagement, you can get yourself out. Very good.
I like it. Especially you can be more aggressive with your vultures, because I guess there's two things, right? There's the offensive piece where you've got your vultures that have gone up the board or something with high movement. It can then retreat either around, steal an objective, be annoying, obviously still outside of combat range, but you can use that positioning to get more favorable. Or flip side, it's defensive, right? They've charged you, there's gut rippers, and there's a hero that's supporting. You want to keep that hero alive. Maybe there's a manifestation on the table and you can't lose that shaman. 3 up, you retreat it, because if that shaman dies, that manifestation disappears as well. So there goes your Kronspine or your Purple Sun. So there's some really good play with that particular one.
Yeah.
I think we are all in agreement.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
That one is a very easy one.
Yeah.
Like if it was a once per game ability, I think it would be much closer to say Egomaniac.
Yes. Yeah.
But like the fact that it's any combat phase, like that's clear winner.
Yeah. So
this one is a little bit harder. It's not automatic, but it's a little better than what we just had. So you got your Artifacts of Power, the Eye Biter Ash, Mork's Eye Pebble, and the Swamp Staff.
And I think this is really just a 1 or a 2. Now that we've lost Warlord to take extra artifacts, you're really only deciding between Pebble and Swamp Staff. I think people that want to take in their builds the Foot Shaman, I think you really want Swamp Staff. You become a level 2 wizard. That's really, really, really good value for his point cost. 120 points for a level 2 wizard, which with a kind of inherent +1 to cast with the pot crop. Very, very strong. And then Pebble got even better than it was before. It used to just be in the shooting phase, and now it's any phase. So you can pop it in combat, and you're basically just a 5-up board for that one turn. This is great on your Sledge-Raker. It's great on your Vulture. With huge bases, it's going to affect everybody within 12. It's really, really good. It does exactly what it did before, but just more fluid. And then Eye the Ash, we'll say the Ash, I think it's just not as good as these other two. It's still really, really good, but I think the other two are just miles away in front of it. A -1 to hit and wound versus 1 unit is probably going to be equivalent to a 5-up ward everywhere, wholly within 12. So on your 1 unit, so it's just better to have a 5-up ward everywhere.
Yeah. I think Swamp Staff is still the strongest. And that's probably because of my preference of avoiding once per battle abilities unless they're super crazy good. So like in one of my Stormcast lists, I love there's like a potion that lets me fight first. So for me, yep, love that. For this, I'm like, look, Mork's Eye Pebble is good. Definitely 5-up ward is strong. I prefer the guarantee every turn. So Swamp probably is a little higher for me. But the fact that it's a 12-inch bubble and not just it's 5-up, but everyone around that 12-inch makes it definitely closer. So I guess it depends again if you're playing offensively or defensively.
I think this is going to be more what you're playing. So I think for your 40 Gut Ripper list, where you've got 2 units of 20 and then you've got your big Sledge Raker in the middle, you kind of want to take Pebble because you have your Death Ball. You're just like, I'm going to go strong for the center. I'm going to control the center. You can come into me, and then you're not going to kill enough, and I'm going to punish you back. So if you're going to play that, you want to play Pebble. If you're going to play more of the spread board game where you're playing small little units, MSU, then I think you want to go for Swamp Staff because you're not going to get as much use out of that Pebble the one time you pop it. It's all about maximizing Pebble pop when you do it.
Perfect summary, actually. It depends on the play style ultimately. If you are MSU spread across the board, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you, actually. So they're probably close to each other depending on your play style. But yeah, I think Eyebiter Ash is probably like, it's okay. But I think what really makes the Eye Pebble stand out is the 12-inch aura.
Yeah.
It's not just a 5-up, it's the aura.
Yeah, you have big dudes, so that's going to go. That's going to make a lot of work. That's a basically 24-inch diameter from a Vulture Boss. That's a lot of board that you just put a 5-up board on everybody. So,
and even if it wasn't on a Vulture, right? Like you've got yourself either a single or a reinforced unit of Gut Rippers who can just take an absolute punch, take up a lot of the board. You've got yourself that 5-inch aura plus any other support friends like Bolt Boys or whatever. That's a really defensive castle that could be moving up the board or can take a lot of damage.
And the important thing also is the Eyebiter Ash is in the start of the combat phase because it's so if people pile into you, you don't get to do it, right? With 3-inch range now, that's very possible with how you want to play. So I think Pebble is just way, way better.
Yeah, I will agree with that one. You've got 3 spells. Which ones do you seem to cast the most? And again, the great thing is we don't have to choose a spell anymore. We just get all 3 of them, being the Black Pit, Choking Mist, and Mork's Cunnin. Fair casting values. You've got your 5, your 7, and your 6. The Black Pit is a unlimited spell, so you can do extra mortal wounds. But in saying that, you don't really. Kruleboy armies don't seem to have a lot of wizards. Like you have 1 or 2 maybe at most, but it's not like you are a heavy magic army. So I don't expect this to be cast very often.
I think some people have been leaning very heavy cast, but I've been leaning right around 2. So the 2 spells I cast every turn is going to be Mork's Cunning, which is basically old Mystic Shield, except on the 6 now. Amazing spell. You got Mystic Shield back. You're one of the best armies in the game.
So good.
Mystic Shield's insane. Choking Mist is not the monster it used to be. It's now wholly within 18 enemy unit, -1 attacks. That's still also very good, to be fair. If you qualify, this is a great spell to do. -1 attack is brutal for a lot of units. You either 50% cut their damage, or you're at least just shaving off a ton of damage that's coming into you. And this is also to your next hero phase. So this is just a brutal debuff, but it's a little bit hard to qualify for now. Black Pit, I don't think units are at the size where Black Pit is very good. You do 1 in 6 mortals to the unit. We're just not seeing enough big units. Now that double reinforced is gone, this is also just worse because you just can't have big units to hit. Like hitting 12 ogres, you do 2 mortals. Cool, you did an arcane bolt to me. Like this, you've got better things to do than do Black Pit.
Yeah, you're finding armies are on average a lot more elite than they were in the past.
Yeah.
So, the Black Pit, and I think this is kind of where the shaman staff, whatever it was called, that's where, again, it stands out, because Choking Mist and Mork's Cunnin are two really good spells that I'd like to be casting on a consistent basis, in addition to any endless spell manifestations I've got. So having a double caster essentially either means I've got 3 casts if I have 2 wizards plus the staff, or I'm getting the most value out of one wizard, and I can put those points into any of the other support heroes or troops.
2 has been my magic number because, again, I can set up Mork's Cunning on my own. If my opponent wants to give me a Choking Mist target, they can, and then I'll do it. But I always want to do Mork's Cunning, and then there's always at least one endless spell you want to be casting. If that's your Kronspine, or if you're playing one of the endless spell packages, you can always put out one of those. So I think 2 is your big magic number, and Mork's Cunning is the big winner here. +1 to save is insane.
I don't think I'd go a third. I don't think I would go in a third unless I have some list idea that, I think it might be too much. You've got too many good hero choices and unit choices that I think it's not required.
Mm-hmm. The one upside of Gobsprack is he now has his own spell, which is very, very good. So that's a little bit of a conversation for third, but you lose out on Swamp Staff. So, yeah. I still think Mork's Cunning, and then the other thing is always going to be your play.
And Mork's Cunning is probably a really good magical intervention as well. So I would always keep a CP up my sleeve for this piece. No disagreements there. I'll just roll with that.
No, it's perfect, yeah. I think my CP usage has been very heavily countercasting and then also counter shooting. Those are the 2 that I've been very Kruleboy favorable. So.
And even actually casting value of 6, right? Even with the -1 penalty, assuming there's no arcane place of power terrain, casting value 7 with the -1 penalty is still very fair. Like that's worth the trade. When you go from 7 to 8, that becomes the risk.
That's the big jump, yeah.
But 6 to 7 is still a 50. I think it's a 50% chance. Like
7s are 50. I believe
48 point something.
Yeah, around the 50. And you're also +1 with your pot crowd as long as you have them. So you're actually still on 6s, which is really, really nice.
And I was talking just generically. Yes, you then chuck the pot crowd in, and we're now back to 6s. So good job. Oh, I went the wrong way. I'm too excited on spells. This is the time we talk about units. We talk about favorite units, things that are standing out for us. First off, let's talk about our favorite. Well, not even favorite, actually. I don't think I've ever seen him in a Kruleboyz list. So maybe I'll just pull myself
might see
back
him now.
You know who I'm talking about. No. I want to talk Kragnos first. So this might be a really fast one. I'm sure you've read the weapons, the War Scroll. It's still a good War Scroll. It's a strong beat stick. It does its thing. Talking to Carson with Ogres, again, it's a good choice, but, could you take 2 Frostlord on Stonehorns for the same price? I think the answer is going to be the Frostlord, unless you got some crazy ability you want to tap into. For us in Kruleboyz, how are you feeling about Kragnos? Is there some synergy? I think what is he? 680. 680. So it's a big chunk.
He's a big dude. So if you're playing these god models, I think before in 3rd edition, you would never take Kragnos in Kruleboyz. He just didn't work. Like, you weren't doing 3d6 charges. And I still am kind of in that zone. Like we said, we're the defensive army. Now he is a piece that can just go off on his own. 680 is still really expensive to do that, but he has his role. I wouldn't immediately hate on a Kragnos list for Kruleboyz. I haven't played him personally because, again, I just don't think that's my play style. But if you want to play the big bad beater who can go shove forward and he's going to run over monsters with his rampage, he's going to be ignoring magic with his shield. He actually seems like a viable choice now. He's not my favorite, but again, it's just kind of what you want to play. I've never been the big person to go play god models like this, like Archeon, Nagash, like that. That's just not my thing. But if that is your thing, I think it's actually reasonable to take him in Kruleboyz.
I imagine if I took him, it's probably in the what's the battle formation? Trophy finger?
Yeah, I think you're going whole hog in with your big monsters. I think you're running your Vulture down. You're running Gobsprack down for your casting. So you've got 2 Vultures. You've got Kragnos. You're going straight across that board, and you're slapping people. I think that's what you're doing.
Or middle finger.
Mm-hmm.
maybe I go a bunch of 3 units of up to 3 reinforced. I haven't done the maths here, so like don't. Actually, that's a 2,500 point army, but you had like up to 3 units of reinforced bolt boys that are just like at the back shooting things.
But you got Kragnos running you down. Yeah.
Yeah, you got the plus 3 inches, and then you got Kragnos coming up the board. So you're either chipping away, taking off, reducing the threat to Kragnos while he's just absolutely terrorizing with a 3d6 charge, or you're popping off you're just causing absolute havoc. That's how I would see.
I think you're totally on board with that. I think that's very reasonable. Also, that was the other version that I have a friend who's playing that, and he's loving it. So it's just a lot of support for Kragnos. It's like, yeah, he's coming at you. You need to kill him, but you're also getting shot the entire time, and it's not easy to kill him. Like he's still 18 wounds in the 4-up, 5-up, and if Mork's Cunning goes off, he's back to a 3-up, and then all defense. He's a 2-up effective. Like that's a big dude to kill. Like that's a lot of wounds that is doing a lot of damage. So like I don't hate it anymore. I think it's definitely not my playstyle, but I don't mind the Chake. So
it's playstyle dependent. It's not probably the best way to run Kruleboyz, but certainly it's one way if you want to just use your big model.
Yeah, Kragnos and the big monsters have always been, again, the aggro version. If you want to play aggro, that is all you. But you need to commit. You're going to either win big or you're going to lose big, but you're going to make it a big game either way.
What war scrolls would you call out, and some of your favorites or ones that you recommend all Kruleboyz players either be at least considering, if not an auto include?
Sadly, I think Monster Killers are by far the best unit right now. I think Gobswreck is kind of a pass, like we talked about, but Monster Killers are by far my favorite unit in this game right now. They're incredibly effective. They scream Kruleboyz. They're just insanely good for their role on the board. So Monster Killers are the Warcry Warband. They're very expensive, but they come in a batch of 7 now. They lost their little Grot. He is now a token for the anti-rampage fool. So basically what Monster Killers do is they're 3 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1/1 damage, crits, and they're Rend 1 against monster, or Rend 2 against monsters. So for Gut Rippers and Monster Killers, they have the exact same attacks. Monster Killers actually have an extra attack because they're 3 per, and there's 22 attacks versus the 21 attacks of Gut Rippers. And they have a base Rend. But the reason you take Monster Killers is because at the start of a combat phase, you pick an enemy monster in combat with them, you roll die on a 3-up, that monster strike last. And if it's wounded, it's a 2-up. This ability in conjunction with Noisy Racket, because these are your abilities, you get to choose the order, gives you redundancy on your strike last potential versus monsters. This is really, really, really good. Basically, every monster your opponent has is a liability because he's going to be fighting last versus most of your units. And then also, once per turn reaction, you can turn off a rampage within 6. So you don't have to be in combat, you just need to be within 6 on a 2-up with your Clutcher Grot, as long as your Clutcher Grot token's alive. There's a lot of nasty rampages in this game also. Bellacor's Fight First ability is one of them. You can turn that off. And then you can also just make Be'lakor fight last. That is a huge, huge swing for a unit that is priced very cheaply and is just very, very effective compared to the other units. You don't get the Gut Ripper -1, but you are doing just as much damage, if not more, and you're providing a lot of utility aggressively.
I was just looking at the points comparison at the time of recording. Gut Rippers are 170 points for 10. So that's 20 wounds a pop, while your Monster Killers are 7 models. That's 14 wounds for 120. So if you find that your list is just over 2,000 points, swapping out a Gut Rippers into a Monster Killers is one way of getting around that and not losing anything. But more importantly, I think there's absolutely a build including 1 or 2 of these units, because while they can't be reinforced, you can still take multiple.
Yes, you can take
units
multiple,
of
and they operate. This is where I'm playing personally 4 of them right now, because this by far it's a solo operator that can run around and do whatever you want. 22 attacks, does 3 to 4 mortals. And then their attacks are pretty decent, especially if you want to all attack. 120 points for this unit is insane, paired with Noisy Racket. So we'll imagine 2 of them are fighting. You Noisy Racket with one of them. Your opponent's fighting last of there. Cool, you don't have to swing. You swing with your other one. You're getting all your attacks in, which is a bucket of attacks, before your opponent has done anything. You're just doing a lot of damage. You're trading very effectively. They're very wound dense for their points. They're 8.5 points per wound, which is almost equivalent to zombies.
I was just looking at it. They're 20 more points than Hobgrot Slitters.
Yes.
They're 20 more
20
points.
more points, yeah. Unfortunately, I think Hobgrots are dead right now because Monster Killers are so cheap.
I can't believe it. Like, I'm like, wait a second. You get 10 models in a Hobgrot Slitter. They 1 wound each,
They're
right?
1 wound, yeah.
They didn't go to 2 wounds. So
no, they're not 2 wounds, yeah.
10 models for 100 points. And then I get all of this stuff bonus extra. I get more wounds.
You get more wounds.
And more rules. More wounds. More for 20 more points.
Yeah. I think Monster Killers are by far up and away the sleeper unit in Kruleboyz. They're just insane. They're just your damage per point is off the charts, and your wounds per point is off the charts. And then also, if your opponent's playing monsters, both these abilities are insanely good.
Look, I'm going to give you a pre-warning here that I would not surprise to see this unit go up to 140. So maybe
I think 140 is really where they should be. Yeah.
Look, if you want to go out and buy 4 units, go use my affiliate link and give me a little bit of support back. But I wouldn't be rushing out to buying too many. Maybe 2 is probably the right.
Two, like you said, I think that's the perfect level because you still want some anti-monster tech, and I think 2 is reasonable. They're fun units to paint. They look really good. They're very unique. I think most of Warcry warbands want to be at that level where you could take 1 or 2 of them. They fill their role, but you don't want to be spamming them. Like I don't think that's where you want to be.
Any more than 2, you are asking for a nerf. So I will happily buy them off you on the resale market cheaper. But 2 is the sweet spot probably if you're thinking longevity.
Yeah.
What other units? What else is worth calling out?
So everybody's favorite Boltboyz. Boltboyz are still really, really good. They actually went down in points.
What?
Compared to, they lost the mortal shooting, so the mortal shooting is gone. So they did go down in mortal shooting, but yeah, the ordering for this is all over the place.
Oh yeah, the ordering is just so unlogical. Yes, cool. All right, talk to me.
So for all the flexibility that Boltboyz used to have, in that they were just murdering people from across the board, or all the power that they used to have, they gained a lot of flexibility. So they used to have clauses where you had to either do hasty shot if you moved, or you could only do aim shot if you didn't move. That is no longer the case. You get to choose. And if you don't move, you just get +1 to hit. But the flexibility to move and have a Ren 2 shot version is really, really good. Boltboyz are still really, really good for the value. They're 110 points for 3. I think you want to take 1 unit reinforced. They benefit really, really well, like most shooting units do, unfortunately, right now, from the season rules of priority target. For when they target the general's regiment, they get +1 to hit and wound, which does apply to shooting attacks. So a lot of your shots go to either 2s and 2s with your aim shot, or 3s and 2s with your hasty shot. And also, if you didn't move in your opponent's turn, you're going to counteract your +1. So it's just like being a priority target for this unit is just like insane. It's really, really good for counter shooting your enemy's general stuff, and just being that scalpel unit of being like, I'm going to go pick on your general's units and I'm going to teleport around and just keep shooting them is really, really, really good. And also they're really good at killing weak armor units. So even if you want to just throw them off on the flanks and go kill the opponent's unit that's going to take their flanks, you're like, cool, I killed your 6 Furies or your 5 Fell Riders or whatever, and then I'll be back in the game next turn because I have my teleports. The flexibility of this unit is off the charts, and I think that's why you still take them. I don't personally like to spam them like Big Yellers used to, but I think they're still very, very good.
It's also the psychological threat as well, and they're a really good trade piece. 3 of them are 110 points currently. 6 of them is 220.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a very fair the volume of damage that can come out of the crit auto wounds and just the general profile, especially if you, to your point, taking advantage of the season rules, this is good.
Yeah, it's just solid.
It's not spammable, like you said. Yeah. It's not the Bolt Boys that we used to know.
Yeah,
but it's still good.
I think 2 is totally acceptable. If you want that, again, redundancy, 1 can get caught and you still have some shooting. Or if you're playing like Kragnos with the gun line behind, then you go into that middle finger territory. But I really, really like this unit. I think they're very point cost effective. I think they're just solid all around. They will die to a stiff breeze. It's only 12 wounds with a 5-up, so if anything catches them, they're dead. But they do a lot of damage, and you have the flexibility to get them out of dodge when they get into a bad spot.
I think 1's enough for me. Like 1 reinforced unit's probably enough. But again, it's about trading up, right? If you do a reinforced unit for 220 points with 1 or 2 rounds of shooting, you can probably kill more than 220 points, right? Mm-hmm. So especially if you're killing something in the general's regiment. So it's worth the investment.
Yes.
But would I take 400 points of them? Probably not. Not with the range 18. And if I did, I had to go into the +3 range.
Yeah.
Still,
we're starting to get into its own build at that point, and I think then you want to start looking at the ballistas, the beast skewer bows at that point. So, but these are my favorite 2 infantry units of the game so far. I think Hobgrots are kind of a pass when you read Monster Killers comparatively. The tier breakdown is 100 points for Hobgrots, 110 for Bolt Boys, and then 120 for Monster Killers. So it's only a 10-point spread for each of those units. I think if you don't have the points, I think you sacrifice it on characters instead of sacrificing on units. The units are just so much better than Hobgrots. I think Hobgrots are bad. It's unfortunate, but because I used to love my little 10-man unit of Hobgrots, but this was basically the cut that happened from AoS 3 to AoS 4.
And they were, I think they got to about 80 points last time.
Yeah, they were 80 points. So they went up 20 points. They lost the run and shoot, which is a big deal because they lost a lot of effective range there. And even though bravery is not as bad, the retreat on a 3-up at the end of any turn is just not that good because they will just die. It's 10 wounds with a 6-up.
Yeah, if they were 80 points, I think it'd be worth considering. Mm-hmm. But when I've got a 20-point disparity between the Monster Killers and the Hobgrots, nah.
Yeah, I think as you stratify these units more as we go, like as point changes happen, then we can start talking about, I can take some Hobgrots to fill that flanker role. But right now, it's just like, it's not even close. Like 20-point disparity is like not even close for those units. Or 10 for Bolt Boys, just 3 Bolt Boys.
True, actually, yeah. So, like if they go down in points, I think my opinion of Hobgrots change a little bit because the role is clearer. Like, right, they're the screen, they're the people who are going to run up and seize the center or take the flanks and couldn't care less when they die. They score me that turn 1 battle tactic that I'm struggling to achieve without using take their land, which I really don't want to do because that's a turn 5 battle tactic. Mm-hmm. So 80-point investment or 160 points for 2 units of idiots. Go out, do your thing, get your tactic, die. You stay around. That's a bonus.
Yeah.
Outside of, like, when we're talking 200 points for that combination, like,
yeah,
too much.
And then the last infantry unit is Gut Rippers. Gut Rippers are basically exactly the same as they were before, except now they just have to roll a 3-up for their -1 to hit for non-heroes. It used to be they were just always -1 to hit for non-heroes and monsters, but now it's just non-heroes. But it is a 3-up conditional. I think Gut Rippers are still really good. I run 1 unit of 20. I think it's your solid center. -1 to hit is really, really good this edition. I think it's still a good include. I'm really close, though, to considering dropping them for just more Monster Killers. But again, that goes back to that conversation of maybe we're diving too deep on a unit that's probably going to get nerfed. So don't want to invest too much.
Let's assume we live in a world where this unit is, I don't know, let's say the Monster Killers are 140, 150. Not that I'm telling you it's happening, but let's say this is a 3 to 6 month conversation down the track, and we've realized that yes, they are too cheap. How do you feel about Gut Rippers if they stayed around this 170 mark?
I think we're back in action because this is your only crit mortal melee reinforceable unit. You cannot reinforce Warcry Warbands, So you are limited to just your 7 guys. So this unit holds your Venom, which is, I say Venom for your Sludge Wrecker Venom, and then your Poison, which is your Dirty Trick Poison, very well. It's 41 attacks that can be mortals on 5s, and then double damage with your Sludge Wrecker. That's a lot of damage. It'll kill most things in the game. You're doing, that's like about 30 mortals on average. And then plus your sprinkle of attacks they get through. You have no rend, which sucks, and your 4s and 3s, but we're rolling 5s and 6s. That's what we care about.
And you've got the killer boss on foot that gives you +1 to hit, +1 to wound when you issue all out attacks. So you're now hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, crit mortals on a reinforced unit. So 41 attacks at max potential. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, this unit can slap. Yeah, for sure. It has a lot of buffs that feed into it very well. So I think and this will be much more like a decision point of, are you going to play for the center or are you going to play your MSU? This unit plays for the center very, very well. It's a big brick. It's hard to kill with that -1 to hit, and it holds buffs very well. It's great for Mork's Cunning. You go to 4s. If you can fit in terrain, which maybe you can, you go to -1 to hit, which can be -2 to hit. This unit's really, really good at holding the middle. It's a good brick. I still think it's viable. I think it should come down 10 points. Our Monster Killer should go up points. But I think it still has a place.
170 points for 10 models with 2 wounds apiece. I think they're fairly costed.
Yeah.
I think 170 is fair. Yeah, they could go down 160, but I think like I would not pick them because I think that their 10 points should be 10 points cheaper. Like 170 is very fair. What's that? 340 for a reinforced unit of 40 wounds, 5 up save, 3 up subtract 1 from hit rolls. Could possibly do strike last and soak up that damage. Crit mortals, but it can accept buffs.
Yeah, it's a good unit.
Put that 5 up ward around it as well once per game. This is a battle tactic denier as well.
Yeah, it's a great unit. It's a great seize the center unit. It's a great strong middle unit. I still like it. I still like the 1 unit 20. I don't think units of 10 play a great role. If you're just trying to screen, I think you can just go cheap at that point. Then you take your grots and you're just throwing meat into the furnace. So I think this is actually a good aggressive unit, even though it doesn't read that way, or it's a aggressive unit that can take a little bit of a punch and then hit back really hard.
Yeah, that's how I would see it. Yeah, I agree. It all depends on where monster killers land in the end, but I would have at least 1 reinforced unit of this. At minimum, I would have 1 reinforced unit.
Yeah.
What other units do we want to talk about? What else is standing out for you? I mean, there's a heap of...
The Shaman, it was really easy. The Shaman lost its ability to poison and do elixirs, but +1 to cast, don't sleep on +1 to cast. As long as you don't roll natural 4 or below, you're a +1 to cast wizard. That's really, really good, especially in this edition with not a lot of bonuses to cast. The +1 save is okay. I actually haven't been able to use it effectively yet. I think Kruleboyz just kind of don't really love this role. It's only +1 save in your turn to an infantry unit. So if you're being aggressive and you fail your always strikes last, you can be +1 save on the unit that's not fighting first. I think this is just still really hard to use. A lot of times, if you fail your if you fail your fight last thing, your other unit's just going to die anyway, whether it's +1 save or not. This is actually good for the Gut Rippers. This is more reinforcement for the Gut Rippers because then you're playing enough wounds to actually matter. Like a Monster Killer unit doesn't really want +1 to save because it's just 14 wounds. It being +1 to save is just not enough to affect them. But a Gut Ripper unit does like +1 save if you fail your fight last ability. So it's a little restricted there, but being a +1 caster is really, really good this edition. And being a 2 caster with Swamp Staff, really, really good.
And this is where you could, and this kind of goes back to this whole idea of having 1 unit of reinforced Gut Rippers where you have 20 models, you've got your +1 save potentially from the elixir, +1 save from the spell, so you're now at +2 saves, so really soaking up some damage. You then have the ability to strike last, you then have the ability to do all these other things, a 5 up ward if you need it. This is a really super durable, you are investing a lot, and some of the battle plans really reward you to stretch out from your castle, so it's gonna impact you sometimes, But when you're playing those, seize the center type, 4 or 5 objectives in the middle, this could be a really tough nut to crack.
Yeah. And I think it's a good include. This is a nice bonus perk, which is always a nice thing for rules like this, where it's not the reason I take this unit, but it is an upside. So that's always a good thing to consider. I'm taking this unit to cast spells, and it can maybe give me +1 armor if I need to do it in that situation.
And what's good is you can do the spell for +1 armor to a different unit. So let's say you go for the elixir, you do it at the start of your hero phase, it fails, cool, I've got the spell to get me out and still give the +1 save. If I really need to save stack, I could do +2 from that combination, or I could go spell here, elixir here, and I've now got 2 units with +1 save. So gives you that whole, again, utility of the rewarding good thinkers.
And then the Snatcher Boss is probably the other good one. I think the foot bosses are really easy to go through. I think the foot bosses are really bad right now. I think a lot of people are kind of in this boat where melee foot characters are not worth the drops.
This guy, the killer boss with Stabgrot.
Yeah, I think him and the Merc Knob kind of fall in the same spot. So he's the guy that gives the +1 to hit and wound when you use all attack. And then he has a couple weird rules for his stab route. He can either get a 5-up ward or he can do D3 mortals once per game. Besides that, he's just a foot dude. Him and the Merc Knob gives a 12 bubble of 6-up ward and does some mortals, splash mortals in combat. Foot melee dudes in this edition are not doing too well. They're really good if you have the points for them and they're cheap and they can fit inside the battle regiments for other heroes. But besides that, I think it's hard to justify these as adding a drop to your army. Most armies right now are falling in the 2 to 3 drops. And if you're taking these, you're committing to a 4 to 5 drop. They're 130 points. And the damage output and health is just not amazing. He used to be a 3-up save. He's now a 4-up save. His stab route used to be an extra wound, so he was effective 7 wounds. Now he's 6, and he went up like 50 points. He was 70 points before.
The killer boss was a 70 points?
He was a 70-point hero.
Wow.
I loved him because he was the guy that did the immune to battle shock. He'd bonk a guy. But now I just don't... Like, this is a unit of monster killers, this guy.
I'm gonna counter you. I don't quite agree with your statement, and part of the reason I don't agree is this unit can join another hero's unit, so he doesn't have to be a drop. The killer boss with Stabgrot can join an eligible unit as a mob wrangler, and your breaker boss, your gobsprak, your killer boss on either Vulture or Nash 2. Like most of your heroes, this unit can join as a hero within a hero's unit. Yeah. So you don't have to have the 4 drops or the 3 drops. Mm-hmm. And I like the +1 to wound.
I just don't like the +1 to wound. So it's a reaction to your all attack, so you got to be wholly within 12. My problem with him is just you're paying 120 points to basically do +1 to wound. Because you don't affect the +1 to hit, you're just adding +1 to wound. Now... It does, again, work in a bubble. So this is, again, back to the bubble statement, where I think if you're playing 2 big Gut Ripper units and he's sitting behind both of them, it's a lot easier to maintain that 12-inch bubble. But yes. I think for a lot of units, because like the Gut Rippers are really the only thing that he's going to keep up with, unless he's charging.
Agreed.
He's not really going to affect anything else because it's only Kruleboyz infantry also, so it's literally just monster killers and Gut Rippers. These are the only 2 models. Well, because your bolt boys can do it, but like you don't want your bolt boys fighting in melee. That's not what they're there for. So it's only affecting 2 units. Monster killers operate solo, so they're going to run off. So this model literally only affects another unit of the game. So are you going to take 120 points to buff your Gut Rippers for +1 to wound? Is the question. I don't think so.
So this is where if I'm running a bunch of monster killers because I can't reinforce them, I'd agree. I would wholeheartedly agree with you because +1 to wound, 120 point tax to essentially give 7 models +1 to wound is probably not a good investment. If I'm building the bubble castle, right? I'm building the 20 Gut Rippers with, maybe giving them the 5-up ward artifact around them. This guy's behind them giving +1 to hit, +1 to wound. It is a big investment. first and foremost, right? We're at 500 points approximately without even chucking in the shaman, right?
Yeah.
If you put in a shaman as well, we're now in that 600-ish kind of area where it's like, if this is 1/3 of your army, is 20 gut rippers with a shaman and the killer boss worth it? It's up to you and your play style, pros and cons. It's not auto include. It's not trash. I think it depends. It's list dependent, right? This is a reaction to picking a unit in my army. It's not I start my regiment with a killer boss. It is my army would really benefit from a killer boss in it.
Yeah. I just my standpoint has always been, I think you want more guys. I think Kruleboyz are always, even though they only have a few units, the units have just always been way better than characters, unless those characters are super important, like Gobsprack, like a shaman. They need to be filling a role, and they need to be actively doing something. This guy will die if he gets in combat. He's a 6 wounds with a 4-up. Yeah, like I just don't like. I don't think we're the army to do backline hero support. I like my big monsters. I like my breaker bosses. I like my vultures. I like my snatch boss. I want them in combat. I want them doing damage. The reason I liked this guy before was because of bravery, and now that he doesn't do that, I just don't think it's good enough.
Yeah. Look, I think agree to disagree. I don't think there's a strong argument either way. I think it's just depending on list building, and to your point, you prefer this.
Yeah.
How are you building your list? But I certainly wouldn't start with a killer boss with stab grot. Like I'm not picking this hero and then building a regiment around it. It is, as you said, I picked the units. I've got the units. This is going to really help me. If I don't have the offensive power, then like if I'm just doing a single unit of gut rippers, you stay at home.
I think if with 2, I think you're right. I think with 2, you can definitely slot him in behind.
What else? Let's talk some of your monsters, right? You tell me that's actually, is this guy all right? What's this guy doing? The 6-up ward.
This is the 6-up ward guy. He doesn't fit. He's not a mob wrangler. So he's an additional drop. I think this goes back to the Kruleboy problem, where you don't really want to be like a 6-up ward is not going to make or break your army. It's very nice. Don't get me wrong, 6-up wards are amazing now that all the demons have it again. And he does some splash mortals in combat. He does like 1 mortal some of the times, and then if you're all 6, you do D3. But just like buying a 6-up ward for your army is not really that good. This is again the play style of like, I'm doing my double gut ripper brick of middle. I think if that's what you're doing, this guy has a lot of room there, because again, you're just going to give a 6-up ward to everything in that bubble. But if you're spreading out at all, he's probably not that good. 12-inch, he's only a 40 mil dude, so you're really only getting like 13 inches of diameter. It's okay.
It's a nice little out if you don't want to take the 5-up ward artifact, right? Like, yes. I really want to go the staff, but I want some type of ward. I am doing the 20 or 40 gut rippers. I need some type of ward, but I don't want to do the 5-up, or I don't want the just once per turn thing. Cool. Yeah. This is that consistent 5-up, right? So 6-up, consistent. Mm-hmm. So you got 2 units moving up.
No, yeah, I agree with that. If you don't want to take Pebble and you want to take Swamp Staff, this is a good alternative to just maintain your Pebble. Because a 6-up ward every turn is probably going to be equivalent to like a 5-up ward once per game. If you're fighting more than one combat, it'll probably break even.
Yeah. Or if you're really worried about the alpha and a lot of armies are turn 1 charging, this is a nice way. It's a passive ability. Monster-wise, you were talking to me about, what were you saying? Scumdrek? No.
The Scumdrek I don't think is very good. Scumdrek is the named Sludge Raker. He benefits Hobgrots only.
Oh, just skip that.
Which is, okay. He gives Hobgrots mortals, but we already said, like, why are we chasing good money with bad money? The other one is the normal Snatch Boss. I think he was everybody's favorite from back in the day. He used to give the 6s do double mortals. Now it's localized. It's a 2-up. You pick 1 unit, and you just give that unit +1 damage to their venom or not the venom encrusted weapons. Their crit mortals are now +1 damage. So if you target a gut ripper or a monster killer unit, you just give their units +1 damage on a 2-up. That's very, very good. It's making your gut rippers 2 damage each, and it again combined with the poison from the Dirty Tricks, you're doing 2 mortals per 5 or 6. That's very, very good. He's not the beat stick he used to be. The guy up top fights exactly the same as he used to, the Sludge Raker's attacks got way worse. He lost his tail attack, and he lost mortals in combat with a lot of his stuff. So, unfortunately, he's not going to be the absolute monster killer or just unit killer of pumping out 30 mortals like he used to be able to when a shaman would buff him and then he'd run off on his own and kill everything. So he's much more relegated to a support role. He's going to make your units the killers, not himself. So I still like him a lot. I think he's actually closer to being a pass than he used to be. He used to be automatic in every single list. It would be insane because he'd give the mortals to shooting. He'd give it to everybody, right? But now he really benefits one unit.
He's fine.
He's fine. He's very fine.
I look at this and it's fine. Like, again, it's not something I would start my list with, but as my list was starting to form and this would benefit me or my style that I'm building around, but no auto include.
He gets 5 2-ups to give a unit +1 damage, assuming he's alive the entire game, and assume you'll miss one of them, so 4 2-ups. So he's really for the big push. If you really need to kill a unit that's just going to come down and bear down on you, and you need the damage to kill that unit, he'll provide it. But it's not him providing it. He's buffing another unit to do it. So he's really going to be in conjecture with another thing.
Yeah, the question is this 300-point hero getting the value out of that buff, right? Like, it is a big investment, right? Like, when I think about 300-point support heroes, I'm thinking that Hurricanum, I'm thinking the Chaos War Shrine, I'm thinking all of these really tanky, really definitive, almost guarantee type of things that it does. He's
right in between. I think if he stays where he's at, I think you could skip him or take him. I liked him personally. I think that push is really needed because there's some situations where if the mission dictates, like the Vice, for example, there's one objective left in the middle on turns 4 and 5. I have to go push them off. Like, I have to answer my opponent's armor or big unit. This will give you the push to do that. But in other games where you're more spread out, he's going to feel a lot weaker. He's not going to feel as good as he used to because he doesn't fight as well. His once per turn, end of turn, extra mortals is just D3 mortals. It's like everybody else's. It even misses on a 1 or a 2, and it gives them -1 to wound until the next turn. But he needs to be alive for this to affect them. Since it's end of turn, he might just die. Kruleboyz stuff tends to die, or you might just kill your opponent anyway, so it probably just won't matter.
If this was 280, I probably would be much more favorable. At over 300, I'm a bit... Because, again, we just talked about a unit of 20 Gut Rippers is 340.
Yeah.
These
are equivalent, basically, to a unit of 20.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, well, I prefer this guy or 20 dudes. I'm going the 20 dudes. You literally said it yourself, 5-10 minutes ago, that you prefer more infantry on the table or more troops. Yeah. And that's probably how I'm looking at it. Any other call outs we want to make?
Last one.
This first of all, I just want to call out this thing.
This thing's terrible.
That was literally what was coming out of my mouth. I'm actually disappointed of the Marshcrawler Slogoth. Maybe in the
AoS
trophy
5?
No, trophy finger. Maybe trophy finger, but. No,
but you want to take a lot of monsters, so you're probably going to take less infantry in Trophy Finger. So he's not even going to give run in charge.
Oh yeah, true. Oh, because buffs. It's a buff as no.
It's sad they've missed on him so many times.
What about offensive monster killers?
He buffs the monster killers, but you have to maintain the 12 when you charge. So even so really what you're doing is you're paying 190 points to make one unit, maybe 2, run in charge. And that's just not that good. That's a lot of points.
In my head, I'm doing mental gymnastics trying to justify a reason why I might take the Marshcrawler Slogoth. And first off, the Marshcrawler Slogoth was never really in Kruleboyz list anyway. Yeah. It was everyone's favorite. It was Gloomspite Git's favorite ally. We're like, yep. Be free with all of my squig herd. Go do my thing. And in fact, my Marshcrawler Troggoth is a rock gut Troggoth's head. Like, I'm like, I'm going to Gitsify this. But if I was a Kruleboy, no.
This has just never fit inside a Kruleboyz army for the playstyle and what it wants to do. which is sad, but maybe eventually they'll get. I think this is just a War Scroll problem where this unit is just not matching the army. Like, this is just not matching what I want to be doing as a Kruleboyz army. I don't want to be. This goes back to our conversation at the very beginning with Iron Jaws versus Kruleboyz. If this was an Iron Jaws thing, I would love it. I'd love to give my stuff run and charge and go across the board.
Brutes,
are just not running and charging across the board. This is just not what they do. So
if you had like Wolf Riders or some type of light cavalry, maybe.
Oh, it's only infantry too.
You know my point. My point is that if you had like a light cavalry type of unit that could benefit from something like this, I'd be totally okay. You had a Squig Herd, you had Goblin Wolf Riders, you had Hobgrot Riders, like whatever, just something cool. Go for it.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I need this.
I just don't think it fits, and it's very expensive for what it does, and the impact in the game is going to be so low. Where it's basically, would you pay 190 points to give a unit or two run in charge? Probably not. Like, I'd rather just have another unit behind them.
What you're paying for is the 10 wounds, D3 heal, but it's a control score of 2. If it was a monster rather than a war machine, so control score of 5. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, again, we're at 200 points, which is the equivalent of a killer boss on Great Gnashtooth or the Maya Brute Troggoth. I'm taking a Maya Brute Troggoth over a Marsh Crawler every day of the week.
Yeah.
Every day of the week.
That's probably the last War Scroll I would really comment on, is the Maya Brute or the Maya Brute was something I never would take in 3rd edition. And this is something I've put in like almost every single list because the big changes for him, he still works exactly the same. He yanks himself for D3 mortals and he gets +2 attacks per mortal he takes. He has a squish at the end. The rampage is whatever, fine. But the heal is now on every turn automatically. In 3rd edition, this dude only healed on your turn on a 4-up. It was so bad. He would just slowly yank his troll to death over the course of the game. This guy's really good. I think he's a strong middle beater. He's a great recipient for all-out attack. Those monster clubs go to 3s and 2s, -2, 3 damage, and it's just a good middle-of-the-road beater. He's movement 5. He's a little slow. But again, we're playing Kruleboyz. We're trying to counter. We're trying to set our pieces up. We're not running across the board. You're hoping that your opponent falls into the trap of the Gut Rippers, gets stuck, and then this troll will come in and smash them. I always think of Lord of the Rings when Gandalf is like, you're going to hold no matter what comes through that door, and then this dude comes through the door, and it's just like knocking dudes over.
And remember, with that, like the club attack is just like, whoa. Yeah. Remembering there's no Mystic Shield, no Finest Hour. The best an army's going to have is all that defense. So if you that is essentially Ren 3 in AoS 3 terms.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's a lot.
All that attack. That's 3s and 2s. Ren 2 for 3 damage. 4 attacks apiece. Let's say you fail probably 1 in that sequence. That could be 9 damage. Without even tapping into what was the companion rule for the battle formation of
doubling 6s.
Yeah, so 6s would get you an extra 2 wound roll. So
well, you get D3 or you get 2 to 6 extra attacks also from your break of harness. So you yank, so you're actually 6 attack minimum.
Yes, yeah, wow, yes. Allocate your D3. I was just looking at Trophy Finger. Yes, I wasn't even looking at the War Scroll itself. So
Trophy Finger. This guy loves Trophy Finger the best. He's the best Trophy Finger recipient.
So 4 attacks +2 if you, well, not if, it's like when, unless it's on your last wound. Even then, like if I was on my last wounds and I'm like, look, if I can wipe a unit, I'll do +2 attacks, clear the unit, I'll kill myself, maybe. Yeah. No, so I'll do the damage. No, I'll do the damage before I do the attack. So yeah, don't do that. But that's 6 attacks +2 if you, plus with the crits through Trophy Finger if you go that way. It's a lot of
It's a lot of damage.
for was it 200 and something points, like 220 was it or something?
This guy's 220s. So he's not very defensive. It's 12 wounds, but he regens every phase or every turn. So he's healing D3 every turn, which is very nice. So he'll basically heal his breaker harness damage every turn. And plus he's basically immune to chip damage when he goes in because he'll be healing the D3s as he goes. He's really, really good. I think you just want a big beater in AoS 4 that can just kill whatever, and he's your answer to that. If you don't have any negatives to hit, he's going in 3s and 2s, and he's going to slap. He's going to slap hard. He's going to pick up a lot of stuff. And then with all your Kruleboyz debuffs, like if you get a fight last on something and then this guy's swinging in combined with something else, that unit's going to be dead.
Again, this is a trade up piece that you are going to trade up with this, and you will get a lot of really good value from that Maya Brute. I mean, depending on how I run my list, I might even include 2. Like I may go 2.
Yeah, he's a great model. Yeah. Considering what he used to be, this is another nice model. I love that Kruleboyz got more choices from AoS 3 to 4. There was way less choice, I believe, in AoS 3. And now a lot of these heroes are making their way in where they're like, ooh, this guy looks interesting.
I like that we're moving away from the spam, like how many Bolt Boys can I include in my list? How many Gut Rippers can I include? And just, like that was really like the play style. I feel like we're now moving into a blended approach, which kind of leads us into 2 lists that you have submitted. One being your NashCon list, which was a light finger, 2,000 points on the dot. You've gone Morbid Conjuration for your Manifestation Law. 4 drops, the first one being the Swamp Caller Shaman with Potgrot, who's the general and has the Swamp Staff as the artifact. Surprise to nobody. You've gone Manskewer Bolt Boys that are reinforced. You then have the Breaker Boss on Maya Brute. You have 2 units of Monster Killers. You have a Killer Boss on Corpse Ripper Vulture with the Slippery Scumdrag. Then 2 units of Monster Killers. You got the Snatcher Boss with the Sludge Draker Beast and a unit of Reinforced Gut Rippers. So lots and lots of bodies. You're not worried about drops. I mean, it seems like everyone I talk to is worried about the drops. They're worried about auxiliaries, which I think we all should be agree.
You should not be taking auxiliaries. Yeah.
No, like I don't think I've seen any unit in any list that I've built where I'm like, this is worth the tax. This is worth the auxiliary tax. Like, there's nothing.
10 Doom Wheels. We're talking.
Sorry. All right. If we're going into the world of ridiculous, yes, the 17 battle mages, the 10 Doom Wheels, like,
then we're talking. But yes, a normal list should not be taking auxiliaries.
A normal list, yes.
Normal list, yeah.
If you're on the Beyonds of ridiculous, yes, there's a different story. Talk to me about this list. What does it do? I mean, you've obviously talked about the units in isolation, but what does it actually do together as a combination?
So like you said, drops are kind of an issue for most people. I think that's not an issue for Kruleboyz. I think Kruleboyz are very, very good at tactics. And the key thing for AoS 4th is being able to determine, you need to be able to say, I can do 2 tactics at minimum, turn 1, without any opponent input. Whether that's seize the center, take the flanks, or seize their land. Kruleboyz probably aren't fighting, so that's kind of out. But those 3 are all on the table. Seize their land, very easy. If you get a teleport off, you're going to seize their land. If your opponent doesn't screen out all of their terrain, there's an easy tactic turn 1, and you can still do it safely. Because you can then teleport out when they come at you on your opponent's turn. Seize the flanks. You have the Vulture is very, very good at getting the flanks without any extra movement. And you can auto 6 run your other unit to go get the flanks on, I believe it's 11 out of the 12 maps. A Monster Killer can go achieve this tactic combined with the Corpse Ripper Vulture. And then also you've done no teleports at this point, so you can save your teleports to teleport your Monster Killers out if need so. And your Vulture has the Slippery Scumbag, so he can retreat away. So basically what we've done is we've set up a turn 1 where I can go get my max points, I can do my tactic, I can do everything I want, and I don't have to put anything at risk doing so. So I'm not going to throw away 300 points to go get this tactic, because I think that's where a lot of people are struggling is I don't want to go first if I have to sack 2 units to go do these tactics. That's when it feels really bad. But as a Kruleboyz player, you're not sacking anything. You can go do these with relative safety, or at least your opponent has to consider, like, what if they get away? because then now they've put themselves in a position where you can respond and go kill those units that were chasing your units down. And I think that's what a lot of the Kruleboy missions are going to play. So I think I'm kind of agnostic for turn 1, turn 2. I can go either way. And I think when you're building Kruleboyz, I think you want to lean that way because your heroes are really, really important. Shaman with Pogrot, very important. We talked about the Mirror Brute. He's very, very good. The Scumbag Vulture, very, very good. I think you can drop the Sledgeraker on Snatch Boss. But that's a personal decision if you want to do that or not. And then it kind of plays the same way. You still do everything I just said, whether you do that choice or not. So this list is just very versatile. It's very, very flexible. It fights well on the edges because, again, monster killers are really, really good at fighting solo because you have all your dirty tricks. And you're just slowly picking away at your opponent. You're trading up constantly. You want to play a 5-turn game, and you want to win by 10 over that course of the game.
Why Morbid Conjurations as your manifestation law?
I think you can go Kronspine or Morbid Conjuration. I think both are acceptable. I think Shackles is really good. It's just another thing that slows down your opponent if you countercast with Shackles. And then Gravetide, Kruleboyz have always struggled with bodies. Now, I know Black Pit is in there, but Gravetide is another answer to bodies. So that was the reason I included it. I don't think Purple Sun is really effective. And then I don't think you need Maelstrom either. I really think you just want Gravetide and Shackles. But I think that trade-off is enough to justify them. But I think Kronspine is totally fine, too. If you don't have either of those two, Gravetide or Shackles, I think Kronspine's a fine swap. I think it's literally the exact same how you want to play it.
And if monster killers went up, let's say they go up in points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would this list either just crumble completely, or would there be a particular unit that you would drop to keep the framework of this still alive?
I think you can drop the Sledgeraker, like you said. He's kind of on the cusp, and he's 320 points. So even if monster killers went up 20 each, that's 80 more points. So now you can switch out your Snatcher Boss on Sledgeraker for another Mirror Brute. And then it pretty much operates the same way. Yeah, you lose your extra mortals, but you still have 2 powerhouse monsters that can go slap around people. And the big damage is really coming from me making people ASL. The monster killers still do that to other monsters, and then the dirty trick does that to anybody. That's what really gives the power to this list, because you're very MSU, right? So, like, it sucks when you have to trade one at a time. Like, oh, I'm going to fight here. Well, then you fight over there, and I lose a unit. Now I fight over here. Like, I can't fight with multiple things. ASL is the answer to that. So just the more you can provide that, the better the list operates.
Dig it. I like it. I can see your playstyle real coming into play. Definitely not my playstyle in this particular list, but I see how you would build definitely has played out here and gives you a lot of versatility, especially with all the MSU kind of monster killers, because you're just trading up. Mm-hmm. You're just sending bodies around, getting the most value. You've got a lot of movement, which then kind of goes into the other build that I've been talking a lot about, which is more of a castle-y brick. Still don't have to be like you're not Zinch. You don't have to be like this one big bubble of thing. Mm-hmm. But there's obviously that play style. The other one being the Kruleboyz Claw, which this one definitely has a lot of different units, right? So you got Regiment 1 less drop, by the way. You got the Swamp Caller Shaman with Potgarot, who's still the general. You've got the Man Skewer Bolt Boys, again reinforced. You've got your Snatcher Boss on Sludge Draker, who has the Mork's Eye Pebble. You've got a reinforced unit of Gut Rippers, a non-reinforced unit of Gut Rippers. You've got a Killer Boss on Vulture, who is the Slippery Scumbag, 2 units of Killbow, the Beast Skewer Killbow, that is, and then the Bolt Boys. So this is probably more of a, this is probably more of a mixed arms force, right? You've got a whole bunch of troops who can do melee stuff. You got some shooting, you've got some magic, and you want Kronspine as well, by the way, the manifestation law being the Kronspine.
So this is the inverse of what the first list was. So the first list plays on the edges very well because everybody kind of runs around and does what they do. This is going to play for the center very well because you have your strong shooting with your 2 Bolt Boys reinforced. So those are going to be your teleport targets. You have no other teleport targets really in this list. So those are your 2 things jumping around, doing damage, jumping out. Your Killbows are 24-inch range. We didn't go over them, but they are basically just consistent damage that it doesn't move because it can't teleport, unfortunately, but you just need to make sure they set up in the middle and they're just shooting every turn. They're a great target. They're 2 shots, 3s, 2s when they don't move, -2 d6. They can just provide a lot of damage over the course of the game. This is going to be your brick, your castle, where you're just going to go up and you're going to be providing covering fire for your big 2 units of gut rippers that are also reinforced by Mork's Eye Pebble. And your Vulture is still very operational because he just kind of runs around as a solo piece. Slippery Scumbag on the Vulture is so good because being a 12-inch movement monster, they can retreat and then also power through if you charged. He's just so flexible. He's by far the best unit pound for pound right now with that trait. And then you still have your Shaman with Pokrot. You only get 1 cast in this build, so you might as well go big for your Crown Spine. Or if you want to do your Mork's Cunning for your +1 to save, if you're kind of wishy-washy on it. But your Crown Spine is probably going to be your best bet every turn.
Turn one Crown Spine, get it on the table, then turn 2 to 4 to 5, just be doing your other things.
So it's a 1-cast list, and this is only 3 drops, but this is I'm going to take the center, I'm going to be shooting you. And this is also a claw list. So as long as you set up your ballistas in cover, or wholly within 3 of terrain, they can't be seen unless you're within 12. So they're going to be shooting the entire game. And that's the big thing for Kruleboyz shooting. If you take a shooting list, you need to shoot 5 turns. To make your points back, you need to be shooting every single turn you can. If you don't, you're probably taking a bad unit because you're just not going to make your points back on some of these things.
Yeah, especially with range going down, it can be a lot harder. And you're putting a lot more tools in the middle, so you're asking for trouble a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some burning questions for you coming from Discord, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. So the first one you're going to laugh at. So 42 asking, I don't play Kruleboyz, and I hate the Strike Last dirty trick, plus the mortals on 5s. So any tips for the enemies? What should we watch out for from you guys?
So as a Kruleboyz player, the way I lost games was when people forced me to make these rolls. And I think I said it at the beginning with dirty tricks. It's not good if you just kind of wait it out and you're like, okay, they're on a 2-up. I want them to be on a 5-up as much as possible. You don't make a lot of 5-ups. And also if you can do multiple threats. Kruleboyz don't like multiple threats. They have the tools to deal with them now, but if you miss that 5-up, it's going to be really bad. A lot of your stuff dies.
Which 5-up?
The Fight Last dirty trick.
Oh, 4-ups.
Oh, for the Noisy Racket, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
But just to get around the Fight Last mechanic, you have to provide multiple threats. You can't go in with one thing. Kruleboyz are great at killing a big dude because they have a lot of Strike Last on your one dude. They don't like it when you play the same game they do, where you just spread out and do a lot of damage on the sides. Because the individual units aren't very strong. They want to gang up on you. And they also don't want to be fighting the entire game. Again, saves are not good. They're 5-ups across the board. Like, they're taking a lot of damage every time they're fighting. I want to be swinging, and I don't want you to ever swing back at me. Because every time you swing back at me, my guys are dying. So to get around it, I think you just have to force hard decisions. If they roll their dirty tricks every time, it's going to be a hard game. I don't know what to say beyond that. Like, that's just a rough. They're running hot that game, and they're making all their dirty tricks. It's going to be a rough uphill battle.
It's almost like I've got to go in. So if I'm going to try to kill out those, for example, 20 gut rippers, I need to put 2 units in because, you're going to go 1 strike last, but I've still got my first activation correct. And hopefully I clear out as much of, because you can't take the hit, obviously ignoring the 5-up ward or any of the pluses to save. That's how I'm going to win that battle. It's basically a 2-for-1 essentially, because I might strike last, but I've still got something else.
Yeah, you got to overpower the opponent. And Kruleboyz also still hate the double turn because we're still paper. So, like, even though you're giving up points for a double turn, doing a lot of damage will just clear stuff off the board. So.
Worth the trade. Yeah, and it's worth the trade sometimes. Dropping the 4 battle tactics, but you really table your opponent or do serious damage that they can't recover from. And you've got no regeneration. You've got no bringing back units. So that could be worth the trade, especially early on. And you just keep scoring your battle tactics for the rest of the game.
Yeah, there's no healing. There's now, again, besides Pebble, there's no wards really. So like every damage you land sticks.
Yeah. Do you think Kruleboyz meta lists will always include shooting units, or do you expect to see some full melee lists if they're Like, how do you feel?
The good ones, yes. Unfortunately, we're one of those thin armies. Like, there's just not that many scrolls. You only have 4 unit armies, or 4 units, with Boltboys, Hobgrots, and then the 2 melee dudes. So, like, your units are 25% shooting. So you're just going to have to include them, at least 1 unit.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, can you? Yes. Should you? I mean, you're giving away what? Cover fire, you're giving away. Look, you're up against some of these armies. You know, Purple Sun is really popular in the meta. Kronspine can be popular. Even the primals. Like, how do you get to that wizard behind enemy lines?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to some of those backfield objectives? You know, yes, you got your teleports, but you're relying on a 9-inch charge. Like, how do you threaten the whole board? Shooting brings that to the table. So I would probably have some unit. I wouldn't overinvest, but I would include 3 or 6 or a beast skewer bow.
Yeah, I don't think you should pass them by. I don't think there's any list that would ever not have any shooting. I think that's just probably not a good decision.
Yeah, I feel
you don't need to go overboard, but you should have it.
Is there a list where Marsh Crawler Slogoths fit? Nah.
Nope.
No. Look, if someone smarter than me is in my Discord saying this is how I'm building around marsh crawlers, like, tag me, tell me how you're doing it. But I can't justify it for its points. I just can't.
See it,
Yeah. It seems our tricks are meant to be played as second player. So teleport preventing you to score some battle tactics, or preventing you to benefit Boltboys +1 to hit if you use teleport in your turn. So if we go first, how can we adapt?
So I think I think I covered this also. Like, you don't need to use a lot of your tricks. So Venom and Cluster Weapons is only going to be used if you get into combat turn 1. Probably not going to use it. The charge one is only used if your opponent charges you. Probably not going to get charged on your top of 1. So you're limited down to your teleport and your fight last with noisy racket. So, like, I think when you go first, you can use them, but again, it's just you use them when you need to, or they're going to make an impact, and that's going to be a judgment call for each game. The teleport might not even do anything turn 1 because you probably don't need to teleport when you can just walk up. You don't want to go right in front of your opponent to just get charged. So I think you can bypass almost all the dirty tricks. You're top of 1, except for the fight last. And if you don't get out of combat, you're not even going to use any turn 1. So I think that's going to be a game decision call. The game is so fluid for how it plays, especially in 4th. It's hard to give a script of, like, this is how you play these dirty tricks. Like, it's going to be so different for your opponent, the map, the mission, how you're playing, how your rolls are going. Like, it is going to be so fluid. And that's honestly the beauty of 4th, is it's going to be fun because you're going to be on the edge of your seat and you're like, oh, my dirty trick's going to go off. So
maybe if you're taking turn 1, take their land.
Yes,
you want to teleport, but otherwise, because you can't take the flank with a teleport. You've got to move. So, but maybe if you go top of turn 1, take their land as your only battle tactic, and you don't want to go into the center for seize the center. But otherwise, just accept that you're not going to burn it in turn 1, and you can use them as a reaction almost at the bottom of the turn for your opponent.
Yeah, and the first one's going to be on a 2-up for your opponent's turn, and that's a nightmare for your opponent to deal with because they have to plan that you get away or that you get it at that point.
Especially if they pick a battle tactic on a unit that you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to go charge that unit and go kill it. No, sorry, I'm teleporting on a 2-up or 3-up. So, it's a big risk. That's a really big gamble, and it'll punish people. Last question, and then we'll probably bring this home. What is your best choice? Is it, and this feels like Jeopardy, or 1, 2, or 3. So option A is Shaman with Swamp Staff. Option B, 2 Shamans that let you take Pebble, but at the cost of an extra drop. Option 3, Gobsprak, which allows you to be 2 drops. But if you take the Pebble because you're bringing in a Shaman, it's 380 points.
Yeah,
it's list dependent. It's list dependent. I don't think there's wrong choice there.
I'm leaning the Shaman with the Swamp Staff because my main list was that first one, the Nashcomb list that I'm going to play in a month. but that's just the way I play right now. I don't think there's a problem with taking 2 shamans versus taking 1 shaman. I think it's actually even better because it spreads out your bell curve, because when you roll a 4 with one of them, you still have +1 to cast with the other one. So you even out a little bit more there. You do sack 120 points in a drop, but like I said, I think Kruleboyz are actually good at being agnostic for going first or going second. I think that's one of the beauties of this army. So I think between those first 2, Gobsprack I think is just out right now, unfortunately. After playing him for like 5 games, it was just like, I killed a wizard once, and I felt like insanely lucky to do so. And it was like, I need to roll an 11 on 2 dice, and then I need to roll a 5 or a 6. Like, we are speaking of like, I'm just hoping this happens, not a game plan at that point. So
run it if you want to run Gobsprack, but for me, I think I'd rather kill a boss on Vulture for a similar points value personally.
He's
or
80
I would
points
go,
less.
I'm just like, if I had a Vulture and I'm like, I
Yeah.
really want to run a Vulture because of the speed, because of the thing, I would just go to the killer boss.
Yeah.
Gobsprack had fun for 12 months.
Yeah.
It's time to go on a long service leave for a little bit.
Yeah. Play your melee Vulture. He's probably one of the most dynamic, fun pieces you can play right now, with Power Through being a new thing and then the Slippery Scumbag being a new thing. That dude will go 36 inches in a turn, possibly. Like, that is so much fun to play with. He's so mobile, so flexible. It is a ton of fun.
Even new redeploy, there's so many things that you can play around with, or being able to charge into a unit and not worrying about Unleash Hell. Like, that would be my preference. Any final comments, any thoughts, or any shout outs you want to make to your homies?
Kruleboyz are awesome. Hopefully I'll play them again next year for AoS Worlds. I think I was 1 of 2 at Worlds, and I went 4-2. So they're not a bad army. It just takes a lot of patience, and you got to get people to fall into your dirty tricks.
They are a very good army. They are a very good army. But I imagine there's just going to be a lot of like analysis paralysis, where you're trying to remember the 4th edition rules. You're trying to do tricks. There's so much to compress, which is why I said maybe start with the other factions and then like lean in. But this is a really good army. If you practice, you are going to go really well.
Yep, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun being like, oh man, I rolled 7 6s out of my 20 attacks. That's 7 mortals. That's you will just pop off randomly and be like, yeah.
Yeah, you'll do well. You will do well. Any shout outs, any people you want to say hello to? Your East Coast brothers?
Yeah, Mid-Atlantic, East Coast, Team America, USA. Love you all. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I don't love your Twitter handle, by the way.
That's fine. We're all capitalism there. We're built to sell. We're selling.
So the reason I say that is I've got a bot that updates and tells everyone in my Discord in the Worlds chat to try to promote Worlds and like what Team Italy is saying and what Sweden's saying, and like every post from America is just capitalism. Like, buy a Barrett of dice.
Yeah.
Go buy Grey Matter thing.
It's on brand.
It's just like. Do you guys post anything about yourselves other than just buy?
I think we post a lot during the event and right before, but I think it's mostly automated before that.
It was just capitalism to its core, but I love you, America. You guys are hilarious. But mate, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad you were able to join us again. Again, Jacob doesn't know everything. I'm sorry to break your hearts, but look, it's this is coming from probably one of the most experienced Kruleboyz players that I know that I could think of, and this will be a really good starting spot. And you may disagree. You might think that the Marsh Crawler is the greatest unit in the game, and there's something that we have not connected to. And you know what? Then you go 5-0, and I'll bring you on the channel and say, let's talk about the 5-0 you
show me the secret tech. Kruleboyz are awesome.
Somebody does.
Yeah, we're only 2 weeks into this edition, so like it's wide open.
And if somebody goes 5-0 with a Marsh Crawler list, you can come on the channel. You message me and you come on, because you are clearly smarter than everyone in the room. I need to know what you've done, because I don't get it. I don't get why you go heavy, or even any, to be fair. All right, I'm going to go. Jacob, you've been an absolute pleasure. Keep playing those dirty tricks, and I can't wait to see how your lists unfold. And if people want to go out and buy a whole bunch of Monster Killers.
Yeah.
Go use my affiliate link. Go
Yeah.
buy them from me and hook me up because you're playing a dangerous game. Very dangerous.
Yeah. Every Feck player with 60 Beast Flayers is feeling that right now.
Well, I had a unit of 30 Wildercorp Hunters, so they're the same thing. So I can't reinforce them, so I'm running I could be running 3 units of 10. I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to run 3 units of Wildercorp. I like the unit of 30. I can't even reinforce them to 20. Like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Just don't. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good chat.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.